So,
in half a mile, turn left to I-75
I would have
south.
typed this out, but I'm going to pick up another passenger, and I would have talked it out, but it only records 1 minute intervals. All right, so there's only been a few handful of times where I have felt, just due to the sheer number and the sheer amount of comics that are constantly being printed since we've been born, that I've really just dived into an issue or a particular set of series. Because most of the things that we know about our most favorite heroes can be done with a simple Google search or something. However, when there's a game changer story or something new in geek culture, I tend to gravitate towards it. Like, I tend to prefer the prequels more than the originals. Not to say that the prequels don't have their faults or they're better than the originals. It's just that the prequels was produced at a time where I was a flippin' adult and consciously able to dive into the origins of the Star Wars universe, for lack of a better word. Still, hands down, the best form of Star Wars is the now non-canonical 2003 Clone Wars, where you got the best display of Murder Mace Windu and General Grievous, Yoda, the whole nine. Nothing will beat it, hands down, by far. Still my favorite thing, with Kit Fisto and everything. So, you son of a biscuit, you canceled on me. I had a stoplight, I was on my way. Anyways, since that ride canceled, biscuit eating sponge monkeys. So, in the process of all this,
In 1,000 feet.
oh, shut
left.
up, because they're gonna ping me again and they kiss my white ass. In the process of all this, there's only a very few comics that I tend to gravitate towards. There was the Avengers run. I forgot who wrote it, but it was in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s.
Turn left.
And
Then
I've
turn
only
left
liked
on Bill
that
Gardner
run
Parkway.
of Avengers was because it was something that I can afford to buy. It was issue number 1 of volume 2 or whatever, or volume 2 or 3 of the Avengers. So I was able to really go in here and just buy from issue 1 through everything else. The cool thing about that was I followed that Avengers run to like issue 23 or something, and I think it got canceled, whatever the case may be, I don't know. So that issue, that Avengers run was a pretty cool one of mine that I like. Another one that I like, or that I collected, was the Spider-Man Identity Crisis. I forgot what it was, but Spider-Man could not be Spider-Man no more, so he adopted 4 different identities: Prodigy, Ricochet, Dusk, and there was one more. Those 4 costumes ended up being called the Slingers, and they ended up being given their own 8-issue series. This is when they thought everything Spider-Man would sell. It's a great series in my opinion. Ricochet ended up being a mutant. If he pops up later on, I don't know, because he's tied to Spider-Man. But it is a wonderful thing of being able to see that. So the Slingers. At the same time I was collecting the Avengers series in 2000, I also got into Heroes for Hire because I wanted the smaller groups. Even before then, I was collecting Avengers West Coast, stuff like that, the little unknown smaller groups. And so Heroes for Hire in the 2000s was one of my favorite books. One of my favorite books, and is what got me really keen to Danny Rand. There it is. This got me really turned on to Danny Rand and the Heroes for Hire, and Luke Cage and Power Fist and the rest of them. Now, needless to say, that was brought me on to Black Knight, Dane Whitman, the whole nine. And so now that leads me to current day. In current day, The only comic that I picked up that has me integrated from start to finish was, surprisingly, Batman Hush. Because it was one of the few stories, I don't know, it just grabbed me at a particular time. And you knew from the start that there was somebody who was manipulating Batman, who at the time was at the peak of his overpoweredness. Like, he couldn't be touched, like he knew everything. And what was so cool about the Hush storyline was that he wasn't expecting this betrayal. So while he wasn't expecting this betrayal, I was just like, oh, this is dope as shit. This is somebody he never expected. He, the last humanity that Bruce might have had in his damn system was gone after Hush, which was why it was awesome. Hush and Talon are still two of my favorite villains that came about because A, I was, visually conscious and aware of them, and B, that was that. Now, after Batman Hush, Civil War, the first Civil War was fucking awesome. I was in school, I was living in the library because I had no Wi-Fi, and whenever I needed a break from doing like 2 to 3 hours worth of work on my schoolwork, I would take an hour's worth of rest and just read through everything that I can encapsulate with the Civil War storyline. Civil War was the shit. Completely the shit. So I understand why couldn't be as large scale as it was for the feature, but nobody would have tuned in for that long ass shit, because you would have needed to have the TV shows and doing the things both the same way. Plus, mutants were not a major part of it because House of M had just happened before then. Avengers Disassembled was another storyline I read. Beautiful, beautiful. And this is beyond Secret Wars, because Secret Wars came out well before we can be conscious. But back then, they didn't they didn't have an event every 2 years or every 6 months like they do now with ADHD. They just kept writing storylines and had major events, and had, cool ass events, season openers and season endings. They didn't have oh my god, this is a big finale type shit. So, with that being said, if it weren't for Comic Historian and Comics Explained, I'll lose a lot of track of shit. Comics, because fuck, we got lives to live. Right? Right. So, that being said, I wasn't a big fan of the look of Xavier being able to walk in the House of X and Powers of X preview with this big ass helmet that's Cerebro. Like, he walks around with Cerebro on all the time, unless you catch him in a position where he has to not deal with the business of mutant kind, or before you get to current day, he's always had Cerebro on his head, which is a mobile Cerebro, which is cool. And then you start to wonder, well, how's that mobile Cerebro happening? X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 so forth. So I believe this is the first step of the X-Men being introduced to the MCU. So when they finally get into the MCU around, say, phase 5 and 6, or sprinkling in 4, 5, and 6, then if they're pulling from current universe, they'll be pulling from the reboot stuff, like in 2018, 19, and 19 and 20. So by the time 2024, 2025 come around, all this stuff will be about 5 years old, which is still retconned, and they can reach for the older shit that we would know from the 80s and the 70s, the 60s, stuff like that. They'll retcon some of that to the future. But the cool thing about House and Powers of X, first of all, they bring back Krakoa, the living island, and they give him a solid origin. If you know about X-Men, the first team of X-Men disappeared on the Krakoa, the island, which was a mutant island. So he's basically a sentient continent. So they brought back Krakoa. They brought back my boy, and Reggie, you know this. Holly, you know this. Anybody who's been in the old Saturday Nation, fuck New Nation, knows that I am a big fan of Cypher, because I'm a big fan of people I'm a big fan of mutant abilities that are not brute forced abilities. Like everybody likes Hulk because he gets mad or he can't be defeated and da 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 da. Whatever. Cypher is literally somebody who can talk to Hulk and make everybody talk to the Hulk like the Hulk can fuck with him or talk to him like they're trash mouthing him. Does that make sense? Like if you cannot communicate with your team in a battle, then it's pointless. That's what Cypher has the ability of doing. So they brought Cypher back. And if you're wondering about a lot of things that happen in the House of X, Powers of X, it's leading into the reboot of the entire everything X-Men related, like everything. So the X-Men Red, Blue, Gold, and whatever teams that they had, not even a couple of years back, those are done, trashed. I don't even think Wakanda is a thing anymore. Well, I don't think Storm is the princess of Wakanda anymore because they still had the secret invasion, and Namor is back without the Phoenix Force. So the Phoenix Force has been not retconned, but that's in a different. And this is the crazy thing to explain away why Storm is not with. To explain away why Storm is not married to T'Challa, why Wakanda is not destroyed, why Namor still lives, and the Phoenix Five and all the other happenings is because Mortar McTaggart is a flipping mutant. Y'all don't understand what I'm saying. Mortar McTaggart, the geneticist that is the opposite of Mr. Sinister, is a mutant. And in House of X, Powers of X, it's laid simply out that she lived her first life not knowing she was a mutant, lived to be 76, had a couple of kids, died in her sleep. Boom. Then she became conscious. Okay, in her first life, she went at the age of 13. She got into a fever. She got real sick. Nobody knew what was going on with her. She was probably on her deathbed, and the next day she woke up right as rain. Anybody else knows this later found out this was the manifestation of her mutant powers. However, in the process of doing this, she woke up. Now, when she's waking up into a new life, it's basically her soul of her essence transferring from one body to another body, but it's not within the same lifetime. Does that make sense? So after, it's basically, if I wake up in the next lifetime, it's the same world, but it's been reset. So it's like the whole world been reincarnated. But the only person who remembers the old world is Mortar McTaggart. Like, that is wild. That is mind-blowing, because each time she's different face. She has the same parents, from what I've seen. She has the same parents, same life. She started doing a scientific experiment on herself, to where if she remembers things from beforehand. So if she does the same things, and the same things will happen. Different things will happen, like in the next life she's born with red hair, the next life she's born with blue hair, one life she's born with red, blue, green, just different nuances, like one, but she's always white for intents and purposes, but one she's got green eyes, the other she has blue eyes, another one she has brown eyes. She may have short hair, a short fade, long hair, whatever the case may be. Her personality doesn't change. Her eyeballs and her features, her hair, the physical things you can change, like the eye fades and the hair, can change. But basically she's the same person. And she just replicates. Like, that's just how she is. She ends up thinking that she's a disease, a mutant, because she meets the same man that was her husband in her first life. However, she has perfect recall of her first life, and therefore she understands that he's not going to change. She has no hope of him evolving because she knows what his final form, Dragon Ball Z, is going to be. She understands what his final form is going to be. He's never going to evolve past the final form. So they grow apart initially. Then she met Charles Xavier in passing on the first life. The second life, she meets Charles Xavier and she watches him. In the first life she had, he never said they were mutants exist. Her second life, he says mutants exist, and she realizes that she might be a mutant. She changes her original college stuff to like being into studying genetics and stuff like that. And lo and behold, she figures out the mutant thing. And then something happens. She dies. Her third life, she immediately gets on a plane. She goes, like, as soon as she's able to be conscious, to fly by herself. She fakes passport. She flies from Ireland to England and crashes. So her third life is just wasted. Her fourth life and her fifth life are the most wildly integral ones, because in the fourth life she finds the mutant cure, which just derails the ire of everything, and the world is still doomed, because that's when you have the Days of Future Past. The fifth life, she creates the cure, but she hides it. She doesn't make it public, and she continues to study herself. This time she falls in love with Charles Xavier, gets to know him a little bit better, about it, and so forth. So in that process, she gets captured by Destiny, the mutant precog, Mystique, who is her lover, and Pyro, the three of them. Now, Destiny can know who Moira McTaggart is. She's like, what do you are? I'm just a regular ass human. Destiny's like, no the fuck you're not. I can see the future. I can see several different futures in play. And this is not your first life being here. So we're in one future that I know have already happened. So she's really, the brain just, literally the process of just Destiny's knowing what life she's in now, the mutant Destiny, she knows what life she's in now, so she knows it's played out. She knows she's going to reach Moira McTaggart eventually, and she plays it out to her advantage to get to Moira McTaggart in Moira's fourth life. Now, in Moira's fifth life. Now, in Moira's fifth life, in Moira's fourth or fifth life that they get a hold of her, and she goes, "You're a mutant, and yet you're betraying your kind." She's like, "You think you're gonna live on forever?" And Destiny tells Moira McTaggart, she's like, "But every time when you first done your mutant powers," she's like, "your mutant powers came when you were 13." She was like, "You will not always be able to relive your life indefinitely. You will not relive, your soul will not, basically your essence, your life soul will not reincarnate to where all your memories are still functioning for every universe cycle that happens. So for every implosion of the multiverse, every, death of the world or whatever, she will not always be born at that exact same time. Because that's her mutant ability, to be born at the exact same time every life cycle of the universe. That's it." And she was like, "You have maybe 10 or 11 if you really try lives left." So she's on her 5, mind you. So that means she's only had maybe 5 to 6 more lives left to do this, right? And what happens in the most vicious of sense, and this is covered in most of the books up till the last 2, which is House and Powers of X6. So I've covered 10 books already of information. But what happens is Pyro burns her a slow death. Like, it's a low flame that burns the flesh off of you. It's not like an incinerating flame that goes like that. No, it's a slow flame that you can burn on your skin, and you feel the pain receptors burning, and like that. Now, after that, Moira changes her complete tune. There's one life where she joins the military, and goes straight into trying to assassinate the entire, one that she aligns with Xavier, tells him exactly what's going on, says, "Reads my mind because my past lives are all in here," and he creates a mutant utopia. Sentinels still come and destroy him. She dies. Then she aligns with Magneto. He tries to launch every missile his militant behind launches missiles against the human race, and X-Men and everybody opposes him. And still into the mutant, same thing, dies. So now we're on 5, 6, 7, life 7. Life 8, she's aligned with Apocalypse. Doesn't work. The cool thing about life 8, though, is she's learning each time she goes through to try to figure out a life of where the mutants exist and, achieve their higher form, the most peaceful way of doing it. The Sentinels are going to come regardless. So eliminating Bolivar Trask it's just going to shift from Bolivar Trask creating Sentinels to somebody else creating Sentinels. So they got to figure out how to stop the Sentinels. They got to remove the abstract of Sentinels being created at all. So with that being said, by the time we catch up to, we see her at the 9th life, and they go against a future Nimrod from a future Sentinel from the House Days of Future timeline, came to our current timeline, ruling everything. And by then she aligned herself with the X-Men, and at the same time in Powers of X, they're giving you a lineage of what happened from year 1 of the X-Men to 100 years to 1,000 years and so forth, and things happening. So at different times you're crossing different lifetimes of Mother McTaggart, but it's also connecting every past volume of X-Men that you've seen and why Mother was different in each one of those volumes of the X-Men. Wild and crazy things. And in the process of all this, there's a lot of things that you had to read. Go to watch, read comic books online, and read Powers of X and House of X. There's a reading list. It's awesome. Or read the YouTube link that I keep posting in the group. And there's one where he finalized them all together. Also in the process of this, by the time she gets to her 10th life, because Apocalypse knows when Apocalypse gets destroyed in his 9th life going against Nimrod, they were like, you have to take this information back. She has a coma, but they put her in a state to where they can feed her digital information and it goes straight into her brain memories. So she can take the information and just spit it back out verbatimly, computer style. So by the time she goes to her 10th life, Xavier, that's how the book opens up. Xavier's like, this is a great world. It's going to be awesome. I know the hubris. The world is going to be great when we tell them mutants exist. Da, 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 da. And she's like, really, Charles? And he's like, how do you know my name? She was like, read my mind. How do you know I can read minds? Anyway, he reads her minds, and he is completely mind blown that everything that he's ever tried to do has failed. He also realized that everything she has tried to do has failed. And mind you, then they fast forward onto a point to where they've already done everything they've tried to. And now we fast forward to a time where Magneto's new base of operations is Bermuda Triangle, which is awesome because he's a master of magnetism, and the thing that throws off every vessel that goes into the freaking Bermuda Triangle is the magnetism vortex that's around it. But of course, when you're a master of magnetism, what is that to you? So that's where he's secluded himself to, so that he's not pursued by the outside world. Makes sense, right? Xavier goes to him. He's like, why have you come here, old friend? Da 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 da, so forth. And mind you, this is in a lifetime now where Xavier has managed not to get paralyzed. So he's walking around, and they're still fairly young. This is probably after they had the bar fight and they revealed their powers to each other. And he goes, I need to show you something. This is going to happen, and both the way you're going to do things and the way we're going to do things is completely fruitless. So we need to join our forces together. We need to join our forces together because no other way that she has tried has worked for us. He takes off his helmet, and he basically just connects his mind. Xavier connects his mind to Magneto's and Moira's mind, and all this information goes flooding different lives that she's lived. Everything from the beginning to the end has happened, and he's sitting there fruitless like, this is fucked. We're literally fucked. No matter what she's done, we're fucked. The human race, the mutant race is fucked. So what he said, we have to do this together because that's the only thing Moira hasn't tried, is try to work together, as you know. And what you get is Xavier just being this walked around badass boss. They found a way to basically repopulate every single humans because this makes sense. Every time Cerebro has detected a mutant, it has automatically read and copied that mutant's mind. Meaning, it sounds kind of evasive, but it works because it read their mind, it knows what their powers are, it knows the level of their powers, it basically gets their personality, it basically copies me into a computer system. That's the backup function. That's the secondary function of Cerebral. Now, Cerebral's already been doing this since the beginning of everything. So when the attack on Genosha happened and 16 million mutants were exterminated, the depowered mutants were depowered, which they haven't got around to the House of M, because that's still canon. House of M is still canon within this 10th life of Martin McTaggart. House of M is still canon. So House of M still happened, and it's weird if some things still happen, some things didn't happen, like the Storm T'Challa thing, and the Phoenix Force, the Phoenix 5 didn't happen yet. So they avoided some things, but some things still happened. Does that make sense? So there was that, and then like it's so mad crazy about what the future is holding, because now they're about to relaunch all the X books, including Mr. Sinister, who's gone fabulous. It's funny. Just read through the book, you'll see it. It's funny as shit. I can literally just be like, fabulous. That's how Mr. Sinister is. He's just to himself, just fabulous. It's funny as shit though. But they're using Sinister to catalog all of the mutant DNA physically, and then it transferred over to holographic style. They've also done all the Shi'ar Empire stuff. So what Xavier's basically doing is copying the minds and the DNA through Mr. Sinister of every mutant. Now, every time he does this, he's telling Xavier he's told Sinister in year 1, I want you to actively get every mutant's DNA on hand, and I don't want you to know why you're doing it until we come to ask you for it or remember it. Just like that, he made Sinister do that. So that's cool. Now, every time you come to a point to where in life 10, they have to stop a mother mode, which creates master modes, which creates more sentinels from coming online. To prevent the Days Future Past scenario, the humans are like, we got to teach it nuances so that they kill mutants and not humans. Tracking? Okay. So once all this happens, they go through the process, and like Archangel, Husk, Monet St. Croix, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean all die. They all die, but they're reborn using 5 different mutant. Elixir, Gold Balls, who I had no idea, who's fairly recent, Monty McTaggart's son, and a few others, 2 more. I can't think of them right now. And they basically just create new mutants, and it's an intricate way that they do it. But you cannot, they haven't done the experiment where you put the recent memories of somebody on a different DNA body. Make sense? Tracking. So it's like putting Xavier's or putting Scott's memories, implanting Scott's memories onto the DNA of Wolverine. You don't have that. They also figured out around this process so that you basically live forever if you die for the greater good of Krakoa, the nation of Krakoa. They've also got the process of you got to verify that you've been dead, or at least Cerebro has not been able to detect you for up to 5 years before they bring you back. He saves your memory. He saves your mental memory. He's already got a piece of your genetic memory or your genetic makeup, your weight, everything. So he's got your mental memory, your genetic memory, and he does it every week. He takes a new copy of what's happening to you every week, and then he goes through the process of every year doing a hard save, like a hard copy save, and he spreads these save locations 5 different areas across across the world that are familiar areas to us. 1 plus 3 backups and a backup for that just in case. So 5 different locations. It is quite awesome, and I haven't read 6 yet, and I've talked for 30 minutes. If you listen to me this long, it is bananas. Go read it. I'm gonna be running around the comic stores to see if I can find all 6 physical issues, because this is bananas. Or all 12 issues. House of X, 6 issues of House of X, 6 issues of Powers of X. Peace.